Well, Glenn, thank you so much for being willing to connect. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better and hearing a little bit about how you've been using virtual reality. To start us out, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Glenn Wiebe. I work as an educational consultant for a group called ESDAC. We're based in central Kansas and spend our time working with schools and districts around the state of Kansas as well as around the country just with best practice and curriculum and assessment. My specific task, Corey, is to work with social studies teachers and tech integration, and that's to me that's a perfect mix of having teachers and students use technology tools as part of social studies instruction. And so I've been doing that 17 years at ESDAC. Before that, I taught 5 years at a liberal arts college in the social science department. But I got my start a long time ago, Corey, doing middle school, 8th grade U.S. history. So deep down, still in my heart, I consider myself a middle school social studies teacher.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you've always got those roots that kind of carry through the rest of
Yeah.
rest of our lives, right? Starting out, tell us a little bit about some of the tools that you've come across that you've seen integrated in the classroom, like Google
Well,
Cardboard, Street View, and whatnot.
right. We started playing with Google Cardboard when it first came out about what 2.5 well a year and a half 2 years ago. There wasn't a lot of tools and resources that could make that really practical in the classroom,
Right.
and a lot of the teachers in schools that we work with don't have those kinds of we still run into lots of schools that say no cell phones, no outside devices, and so to use Google Cardboard and Street View obviously without those devices makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
And so it was almost proof of concept a little bit. But last summer, last fall, as Google released their Expeditions app, and they continue to improve the Street View app, teachers and districts begin to realize this is something that we really can begin to take advantage of and use in our classrooms. And it's easy to use, it's quick to use. Cardboards are inexpensive now. No kickbacks from Knox Labs, by the way, but I guess a blatant propaganda sellout to Knox Labs. They have really good, inexpensive Google Cardboard
Good to know.
devices that we can use, and so over the last 6 or 7 or 8 months, especially, I've spent a lot of time working with school districts and schools and specific individual teachers, trying to help them see the power and potential of virtual reality, especially with those devices. And Expedition, especially with middle school and elementary teachers, they just get blown away with that sort of ability to both monitor and guide kids through having them use virtual reality, explore other places. So that's really what we've been doing. I mean, that's a quick overview, but we still run into lots of schools and teachers who don't know really what virtual reality looks like and how it can be used, and so there's still a lot of ground to be plowed, I think, with virtual reality in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how have you seen some of that excitement that is brought out with using VR in the classroom carry into lessons, or just raise another level of awareness about the content that the students are engaging in? Because I'm sure that you see that.
Yeah, one of the things that we try to work with teachers, obviously, it's the first, even like with Google Earth that came out, 10 years ago, the first thing everybody did was to put in their own street address and go look at their house on Google Earth. There's that first sort of, oh, this is kind of cool, it's awesome, and I can look right outside my house. And there's still that with virtual reality. Obviously, I always take kids and teachers up the very first time we use Google Cardboard and Street View up on El Capitan, and they're looking around. They're 1,000 feet up, and it just the wow factor obviously sells them on the potential. But then there's always that question, like you said, what am I going to do with this now? It's kind of cool, but we've been working with teachers to try to connect that wow factor with content and standards. One of the quickest and easiest ways that we've seen teachers use Google Street View app and the Expeditions app is just to have kids start to connect events with place. We were working with some teachers a couple weeks ago as they were talking about Lewis and Clark and then Western expansion. And in the Expeditions app, there are some really pretty useful tours, expeditions that focus on the West and moving west. And so for kids to see, I mean, it's a simple little application, but for kids to see and experience in virtual reality that place, that this is where Lewis and Clark were, and this is where the wagon trains went, and this is, the kinds of things that they can see and connect those two things together, place and event. We've always tried to do that in history and social studies, but when kids can see that, and they can, do the 360 and get that full feel for what's going on. That's the really cool part of it. One other thing that we're trying to start to do is something that we call field trip exchange, and we're trying to get teachers a lot like mystery Skype, right? Where classrooms connect via Skype, but what we're trying to do is connect schools in different parts of the country, and we're starting with some in the state, obviously, because that's who we know, but connecting schools in western Kansas where the Santa Fe Trail ruts still exist in Dodge City, for example, and then other schools across the state that there's no way they can be able to drive to Dodge City or look at these trail ruts, but schools now are using the photosphere camera option in Google Street View app and the Google Cardboard camera that lets them take panoramic video or photos with audio of collecting those things and then sharing those places between schools. So it's not just like, now I'm going to go look at the Google Expeditions official tour. We're asking kids to create their own photospheres and create their own panoramic views of places and then sharing those with other schools. And so I'm really excited about that, just because now we have kids not just consuming the content that Google has created, but also creating content and using those same tools to push out content for other students to consume as well. So it's a both and that's the part that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's a really creative application, having that collaboration piece, because I know that I've collaborated with other classrooms through Skype and Google Hangouts, but you definitely add another dimension when you bring in a 360 either video or just a 360 panorama. The other point with that is VR does bring in a level of empathy, right? Like a feeling of where you're at. Tell us a little bit about how you've experienced that in education with 360 video.
Well, obviously, when we work with any tool, whether it's virtual reality or another tool, we want kids to engage with content and make connections at an emotional level with that content. And we know the brain research is real clear. If we can get kids to connect that content at an emotional level, those brain cell connections are much stronger than they would be otherwise. And so anything that we can use to help create that sense of empathy, like you mentioned, is a powerful tool. And virtual reality is one of those. There's a lot of I was going to say a lot of research. I think there's a lot of research that's in process about connecting virtual reality with empathy, and you know this already. There's not a lot of concrete evidence right now because people just haven't done the research yet or completed their studies. But Stanford University has some research out about how early reports seem to suggest that when we get kids or people in that virtual environment, their empathy to the people and the events go up. And there's been more than several people obviously are now using virtual reality. Organizations are creating videos, and teachers are using those videos in classrooms to create empathy, specifically around the Syrian refugee crisis. I know you've seen those, and you're people who are watching this may have seen those, but I really became aware of it. I don't have my notes and I can't remember their names, but I ran across 2 middle school teachers from Washington, D.C. at the National Council for the Social Studies Conference last November. And then we started doing some of our own similar kind of work with teachers of having kids experience that Syrian refugee crisis through virtual reality videos. And I know you've seen probably some of those, Clouds Over Sidra, and I think you may have already interviewed and had some video casts of people who are using that. But that's a great example of having kids begin to understand a situation, a current event, through the use of virtual reality that helps create understanding and empathy. And empathy is a powerful word. I don't necessarily need a student. I want the student to understand the situation better than just reading it from a newspaper or on TV or CNN or Fox News or whatever. I want them to see what's actually going on and listen to the people who are literally involved with that. So empathy is a good word, but I also want kids to start to use those videos, those virtual reality videos, as evidence, because we really work with social studies teachers to help kids solve problems using primary and secondary evidence. That's what we want. That's what we want our students to do in their classrooms. Here's a problem, collect the evidence, solve the problem using the evidence, and then communicate the solution. And so if we can use virtual reality videos and photospheres as primary sources, that becomes really, really valuable as they create they go through what we call an historical inquiry arc. That problem, evidence, solution, communicate the solution. And that's the part that, yes, empathy is incredibly important. We understand the situation, but even more important to me as a social studies guy is how can we use that as actual primary source evidence to create a product. That's the part that I really like.
I love that. And that really brings all of all of what VR has to offer as a tool. It really shines through when you are able to allow students to experience something and take away that primary source, like you're talking about, really understanding on a whole nother level what those people went through, or what that area really looks like, or so that's very exciting. Now, you've had some experience with Google Cardboard and some of these other tools in the classroom. If there is a teacher out there who's interested in starting to use VR in the class, what are some tips that you have for them to get started?
Well, I think they just have to be willing to try something new, and a lot of times that's going to involve devices that they have to open up and use, maybe that they haven't used before. I know a lot of schools have one-to-one Chromebooks or laptops or iPads or whatever. Most of these tools obviously can be used on a Chromebook, for example, or an iPad. Google Expeditions works on an iPad. It's just you don't get that virtual reality experience because I can't put them in the cardboards or the other VR devices with the lenses. And so one of the biggest things is grab some of those inexpensive boxes and just start exploring a little bit, realizing that you're going to have to give your kids some freedom, including the use of cell phones in the classroom. So more and more schools are allowing outside devices, student devices, bring your own device kind of stuff, but we still run into lots of schools and teachers who say, well, my kids can't use cell phones in the classroom, or they can't connect to the school's wireless. They can bring them, but they can't connect. And so now there's all of these sort of details that the teachers have to work out. And I'm just going to tell you, there's going to be some details that you're going to have to work out, and it's okay because it's worth it in the end. And just work with, I guess my first piece of advice after all of that rambling right there is talk to your tech people. Let them know that this is what you want to try, this is what you want to do. Show the tech people, an example of how you're going to use this particular Street View app or Expeditions or whatever in the classroom, and say, how can we make this happen so kids learn more and walk away smarter? And I think when we frame that conversation as I need your help so kids get better, I think a lot of the tech people go, oh, I get it now. I see what you're trying to do. It's not like you're going to try to, ruin my bandwidth, or you're going to have kids sneak in and get, do all these bad things. No, we're using this for instruction and learning, and you can help me do this. And so definitely get on the good side of your tech people ahead of time. and maybe you've experienced this too. We go into schools and we get the Expedition app ready to go, and it looks like but the teacher's device and the student devices won't talk to each other because there's a port that has to be opened up
right.
on the network. So do that sort of back end work ahead of time with your tech people. Make sure things are going to work and they know what you're going to try to do, because if they don't unblock that port, if they don't let your kids connect to the wireless, you're kind of screwed. You're not going to be able to do it. So start there. Start with your tech people first.
Awesome. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for being willing to connect. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the teaching community before we sign off here?
Yeah, one last little piece of advice, I guess. Don't just consume virtual reality. Have your kids create it. And obviously there are lots of tools out there. The little camera button in Street View. Google Cardboard camera is awesome because you can collect the photo and narration, audio during that. And this is your walk away, I guess. Explore a website called storyspheres.com of having kids create a photosphere and then embed multiple audio files on top of that. So now kids are creating virtual reality, not just consuming it. And that's, I think, the part that we really need to start to look at, is not just look at really cool stuff, but have kids create really cool stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, like you said, that's just another level of engagement where students dive even deeper because they have that involvement, that buy-in, and that's exciting stuff. So, Glenn, thank you for being willing to connect, and best of luck as you keep moving forward. Thank you for using these tools and sharing a little bit about how we can get started and getting people involved and using VR productively in the classroom. So thank you for your time.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you, Glenn.